If there is one sport that everyone associates with strength, athleticism, and total badassery, it's without a doubt professional wrestling. Though some call it fake, and those who do should get a chance to speak with Dr. D. David Schultz, haha, John Stossel got smacked, professional wrestling has given some of our greatest pop culture references, awesome catchphrases, and reinforced some of our less subtle hand gestures. The amount of money drawn in wrestling is nearly incalculable. The characters that have found celebrity through the sport have become immortalized, either through chivalry or infamy. I'm Walt, the most gangster nerd on YouTube, and today I'm going over 10 of the greatest world champions of all time. George Hackenschmidt. George Hackenschmidt is in fact the very first person to be recognized as heavyweight champion of the world in professional wrestling. He went on a winning streak all across Europe and Russia, and came to America in 1905 and beat the American heavyweight champion, Tom Jenkins, thus earning the title World Champion. George Hackenschmidt would then tour the U.S., taking on all challengers and hold the title for 3 years before losing to the next man on our list, Frank Gotch. Frank Gotch would defeat George Hackenschmidt by an ankle-lock submission after a 2-hour match. Frank Gotch was born in Iowa and grew up on a farm and was the first American to be recognized as a world champion. Little known fact, he's also the reason wrestling became a high school sport. Frank Gotch would go on to defeat Hackenschmidt in a rematch in Chicago and would set the spectator sport attendance record with 30,000 in attendance. Frank Gotch would hold the title for 5 years and retire undefeated as champion in 1913. Thesz. Thesz would begin his wrestling career in 1932 and win his first world championship in 1937. However, his defeat of Bill Longson in 1948, unifying the National Wrestling Association and National Wrestling Alliance world titles, would cement his place in history. He would hold the title for 6 years and 4 months, the longest at that time, as well as be the first 6-time world champion, with defeats over such legends as Whipper Billy Watson, Bill Longson, and Bronco Nagurski. His career lasted over 7 decades and earned his place in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame and NWA Hall of Fame. Bruno Sammartino. Bruno Sammartino is to this day considered the greatest champion of all time. Defeating Buddy Rogers in Madison Square Garden in 1963, he would go on to hold the title for an unprecedented 7 years and 6 months, the longest title run in history. He would hold the title again for a second time in 1973, defeating Stan the Man Stasiak and hold it for an impressive 4 years. He also holds the current record at Madison Square Garden, headlining 187 sellouts. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013, and is to this day one of the most recognized names in all of professional wrestling. Harley Race. Harley Race is considered to be one of the roughest, toughest champions of all time. Winning his first championship from Dory Funk Jr. in 1973, he would go on to hold the NWA World title 8 times, dominating the entire sport for a decade. He would go all over the world, wrestling in all the territories of the day, drawing huge crowds, and defeating the likes of Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and the Great Baba. He is in fact the first wrestler to ever body slam Andre the Giant, doing so in 1978, and was one of the most feared wrestlers of all time for his brutal, heavy-handed style. Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan is without a doubt the most recognizable and memorable champion in history. He started out in the AWA under Vern Gagne, but would reach stratospheric heights in the WWF. He would defeat the Iron Sheik in 1984 in Madison Square Garden to gain his first world championship and would hold it for 4 years. He would later hold the same title 4 times, before going to WCW and winning their world titles 6 times respectively. It's a little known fact that Hulk Hogan was the very first International Wrestling Grand Prix champion, defeating Antonio Inoki in 1983 and remaining champion until the next year. No wrestler has ever had such an impact not only on the wrestling business, but he was the first to cross over into movies and has the all-time merchandise sales record. It's completely fair to say that the WWE would not be the same today had there never been a Hulk Hogan. Ric Flair. Ric Flair is without a doubt one of the most charismatic wrestlers of all time. He is recognized as a 16-time world champion. However, if you look at the history of his career and count his NWA title runs, WWF title runs, and WCW title runs, the count is in reality 21 times, being a 10-time NWA champ, 2-time WWF champ, and 9-time WCW champ respectively. Ric Flair has been part of some of the greatest wrestling feuds and angles in the history of professional wrestling. His wrestling feuds with Dusty Rhodes, Jerry Lawler, Harley Race, Sting, Hulk Hogan, and Randy Savage were enormous draws. His run as a part owner of WWF with Vince McMahon is legendary, and he is part of arguably the greatest talent stable of all time, the Four Horsemen. Sting. Sting is perhaps the most popular WCW champion of all time, and most associated with its title. He started out as a tag team wrestler with the Ultimate Warrior in the Mid-South Wrestling territory under Bill Watts, but it wasn't until he came to WCW as a singles competitor that he would find stardom. His legendary rivalry with Vader and unparalleled ability would lead him to becoming the franchise wrestler for the entire company, as well as a 6-time world champion. After first appearing as a member of the Four Horsemen, he would immortalize the epic blonde flat top with his signature face paint, but then allow his character to evolve further, becoming the vigilante of WCW and donning the now iconic Crow-inspired gimmick. Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, to this day is still one of the most beloved wrestling personalities of all time. Starting out in Florida Championship Wrestling, he was considered the biggest attraction in the promotion. Known for wearing tie-dye and dancing to the ring, he would appeal to the working class and reach heights of popularity never before dreamed of. Winning his first world championship in 1979 by defeating Harley Race, he would defeat Harley Race again in 1981 for his second championship and defeat Ric Flair in 1986 for his third and final run as the world champion. Not only a brilliant performer in the ring, he was also a big part of the creative process, acting as booker for Florida Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, and WCW. As well as this, he was a brilliant talent scout. He was instrumental in the launching of the careers of his sons, Dustin and Cody, but also legends like Ron Simmons and Scott Hall. Bret Hart. Bret Hart started out in the Calgary territory Stampede Wrestling, which was owned by his father and wrestling god, Stu Hart. Bret would come to the WWF with brother-in-law Jim Neidhart, forming the Hart Foundation, a serious force in the tag team division, winning the tag titles on 3 different occasions. Soon after, he would become a 2-time Intercontinental Champion, and in 1992 would defeat Ric Flair for the WWF title, the first of 4 times as champion. After the now infamous Montreal Screwjob, which is debated as either legitimately happening or being perhaps one of the greatest works of all time, he went on to WCW to become a champ there as well. Now there definitely are some honorable mentions for this list, among them Pedro Morales, the first Triple Crown champion in WWF as well as the first Hispanic world champion, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, who was the first wrestler to be a NWA world champion and WWF world champion, Macho Man Randy Savage, multiple-time champion in WWF and WCW, as well as one of the most memorable personalities of all time. Shawn Michaels, one of the greatest in-ring performers and workers in history. Stone Cold Steve Austin, perhaps the largest draw of the Attitude Era. The Rock, an equally huge draw and perhaps one of the best performers on the mic. So did y'all love our list? Did you hate it? Well, deal with it. Or tell me about it in the comments below. I'm Walt, the most gangster nerd on YouTube, and I'll see you around.